What do women actually want? It's one of those questions that lives in the background of every man's mind, whispered in locker rooms, joked about at dinner tables, and thrown around endlessly on social media. Some boast about being unusually well endowed, while others quietly fear they don't measure up. But strip away the noise, the bravado, and the insecurities, and a real question remains: is bigger always better? Or is that just a myth men have carried for generations? I'm Dr. Maya Kapoor, and today we're going to cut through decades of misunderstanding and finally look at what science, not rumors, says women actually prefer when it comes to size. And the truth might surprise you and maybe even set you free. To answer this, researchers had to get creative. After all, if you simply ask someone, "What's your ideal size?" their response can be shaped by social pressure, by what they think sounds good, or by images they've absorbed from the media. So instead of relying on what people say, scientists began to examine what women actually do when no one is watching, what they buy, what they choose, what they bring into their private lives. One of the clearest windows into this came from analyzing best-selling sex toys designed for vaginal use. Across 8 major distributors, patterns emerged. The most frequently purchased sizes weren't giant, unrealistic models. They were between 4 and 6 inches long. Let that sink in, 4 to 6 inches. And even more telling, on 6 out of 8 websites, the average length of top-selling toys was actually under 6 inches. The average girth? Less than 4.5. Those numbers aren't random. They align almost exactly with the average erect penis size in men, which is 5 to 6 inches in length and around 4.5 to 5 in circumference. So, what does this tell us? It suggests that when women make completely private choices for themselves without needing to impress anyone, they gravitate toward what is normal, what is average, what feels natural. In fact, another study that looked at realistic dildos listed as best sellers across the 5 largest American retailers, plus Amazon, found something similar. The average insertable length was about 6.5 inches. Slightly above average, yes, but not by much. It may point to curiosity, to experimentation, to a desire to explore something just a little different. But the key word is little. We're not talking extremes, we're talking subtlety. And it gets more interesting. Researchers discovered that factors like price and circumference had a much stronger influence on what sold than length. In other words, many women cared more about whether something felt comfortable and affordable than whether it was especially long. Larger than average girth often lowered sales, not raised them. This paints a very different picture than the one men are bombarded with in media or adult entertainment. It's not about pushing boundaries into the extreme. It's about finding what feels good, what works with their body, and what allows them to enjoy intimacy comfortably. Men are taught to believe that only being abnormally large is enough, yet science shows most women prefer normal or just slightly above, and extremes often cause discomfort. That turns the old narrative upside down. So, if you're listening right now and you fall into the average range, and the vast majority of men do, I want you to breathe a sigh of relief. You're not lacking. You're not failing. You are already enough. Yes, you'll always find outliers, women who talk about extremes, or stories that exaggerate for effect. But the science shows us that in private, in the choices women make when no one else is judging, average wins by a landslide. It is defined by connection, by self-assurance, by communication, by how you touch, how you listen, how you care. I've had countless patients, men who walked into my office defeated, convinced they weren't measuring up, only to learn that what they thought was their weakness was in fact their normalcy. And when they learned that, when they stopped comparing themselves to digitally enhanced actors and started embracing reality, everything changed. Their confidence returned, their relationships deepened, and their partners often reported feeling more satisfied than ever. Because satisfaction doesn't come from inches, it comes from presence. So, what's the bottom line? Science says women overwhelmingly choose average. They don't want the extremes you've been taught to chase. They want comfort, pleasure, and connection. And if you're in that normal range, which almost every man is, you are more than capable of meeting those needs. Now, let's step deeper into the research, because numbers alone don't tell the whole story. In one fascinating experiment, scientists asked women to examine a collection of 3D models that varied in both length and girth. Each model was created to scale, and women could actually hold them, turn them in their hands, and compare side by side. The task was simple. Choose the size they would prefer for a one-time sexual encounter, and then choose again for a long-term partner. The results were striking. For short-term encounters, women leaned slightly toward larger sizes, on average about 6.5 inches long. But for long-term relationships, their choices shifted back toward average, closer to 5.5. What does that mean? It means curiosity and novelty may play a role in casual experiences, but when it comes to a partner they actually want to share life and intimacy with, comfort and compatibility matter most. And again, that falls right within the average range. I remember one of my patients, David, who carried a quiet heaviness when he first came into my office. He confessed that for years he had avoided serious relationships because he believed he wasn't big enough. He had heard jokes, seen exaggerated images online, and convinced himself he would never satisfy a partner. After reviewing the research together, after walking him through what women really prefer, I watched his posture change. His voice grew steadier. Months later, he returned, not just dating someone new, but confident, laughing, and telling me, "Doc, I wasted years worrying about nothing." His story is not unique. Many men live with unnecessary anxiety, and that anxiety itself can harm intimacy far more than size ever could. Another piece of research examined how size preferences lined up with women's actual experiences of pleasure. In surveys, women who reported vaginal orgasms did show a slight preference for above-average length, but we're talking modest increases, not extremes. And it's important to note, the preference wasn't universal. For many women, girth played a more important role in creating a sense of fullness and stimulation, though again, the range of preference hovered around average numbers. What this teaches us is that satisfaction is a blend of factors, not a single measurement. And more than size, it often depends on technique, emotional connection, and how well partners communicate about what feels good. Now, let's tackle the elephant in the room, the distorted images men are exposed to from a young age. For decades, adult films have cast men with unusually large anatomy, chosen precisely because they look bigger than average. Lighting, camera angles, even digital enhancement all exaggerate the impression further. A teenager stumbling upon those images has no way of knowing this isn't biology, it's performance. But the brain doesn't forget what it sees. Those distorted expectations plant seeds of insecurity that can grow into adulthood, leaving men comparing themselves against illusions. George, a patient of mine in his 60s, told me that even after decades of marriage, he sometimes worried he wasn't enough because of what he had seen in those films as a young man. His wife, sitting right beside him, shook her head and said, "I've never cared about that. I just want you." That moment said it all. Reality is different from fantasy. And science backs that truth. Let's also not forget the role of comfort. The vagina is not an endlessly elastic space. It is designed to accommodate, but extremes in size can cause pain, discomfort, or even injury. Countless women report that being with someone too large is not pleasurable. It's uncomfortable. One study even found that women ranked comfort higher than any other factor when describing satisfying sexual encounters. That should remind every man listening that intimacy is not a contest of size. It's an act of connection, and when comfort is prioritized, pleasure naturally follows. And here's another point worth considering: the emotional side of intimacy. Women repeatedly rank qualities like confidence, tenderness, attentiveness, and emotional safety as far more important than size. I've seen couples where the man was average in every measurable way, but extraordinary in how he connected, listened, and cared. Their relationships thrived, their intimacy flourished, and neither partner ever once complained about size. Harold, one of my long-term patients, once joked, "Doc, my wife says the best part of me is between my ears, not between my legs." That may sound lighthearted, but it carries truth. Intimacy is a whole body, whole heart experience, not just a physical measurement. So, where does this leave us? If you've been haunted by the question, "Am I enough?" the answer, grounded in science and lived experience, is yes. If you are average, you are not just adequate. You are exactly within the range most women prefer. And if you step into intimacy with confidence, communication, and care, you'll offer something no number on a measuring tape could ever provide: presence. But I don't want to stop here, because the conversation about size is never really about inches. It's about confidence. And confidence is built when you stop comparing yourself to myths and start embracing knowledge. Imagine how different your life could feel if you no longer carried that quiet insecurity, if you walked into relationships knowing that you are enough, if you stopped worrying about size and started focusing on connection. That shift changes everything, not just in the bedroom, but in how you carry yourself in every room you enter. Now that we've seen the science, let's pull all of this together into what it means for you, your relationships, and your future. When women are free to choose, whether that's through the toys they buy, the partners they stay with, or the experiences they describe, most choose average. They choose comfort. They choose what allows them to enjoy the moment without distraction or discomfort. And this is perhaps the most liberating truth of all. The very thing so many men worry about is, in reality, exactly what women want. But let me go one step further. Even in cases where a woman expresses a slight preference for longer length, it's important to notice the word slight. We are not talking about extremes. We are talking about a fraction of an inch, something that pales in comparison to qualities like patience, communication, and the willingness to learn what brings your partner joy. In fact, in interviews with women across different cultures, the most consistent theme wasn't size at all. It was confidence, the way a man carried himself, the way he looked into their eyes, the way he showed presence during intimacy. These were the qualities that created unforgettable encounters, not measurements. Think about it this way: size might catch attention, but it doesn't build connection. Connection is built through how you listen, how you adapt, how you bring playfulness and safety into the bedroom. And that's where true satisfaction lives. That's why when surveys ask women to rank what makes sex good, size usually doesn't even break the top 5. Emotional intimacy, foreplay, tenderness, and responsiveness always rank higher. James, a patient I've known for years, once shared something profound after decades of marriage. He said, "The older we get, the more I realize it was never about size. It was about how much of myself I was willing to give to her." That's wisdom every man deserves to hear. So if you're listening now and still carrying that insecurity, let it go. Stop comparing yourself to fantasy images. Stop measuring your worth in inches. You are already more than adequate as you are. If you are within the normal range, and almost every man is, You already meet the physical preference of the majority of women. The only thing left is to believe it. And when you believe it, when you walk into intimacy with confidence instead of comparison, you unlock something far more powerful than size. You unlock freedom. And here's the ripple effect that often gets overlooked. When a man stops worrying about size, he relaxes. He stops second-guessing. He becomes more present, and that presence transforms intimacy. His partner feels seen, not as a body, but as a person. She feels safe, valued, and desired. That emotional security deepens physical pleasure. In other words, when you let go of insecurity, you don't just help yourself, you help her experience more too. Confidence is contagious, presence is magnetic, and no measurement can replace that. Before we close, let me offer one final reassurance. I've spent over 3 decades listening to men share their most private fears, and this one, fear about size, has come up more times than I can count. And every time, the answer is the same. You are normal, you are capable, and you are worthy of intimacy that is rich, satisfying, and deeply human. The science proves it. Women's choices confirm it, and your own life can embody it if you allow yourself to believe it. So the next time you catch yourself wondering, am I enough? Remember this, you don't need to be 12 inches. You don't need to be extraordinary. You need to be yourself, average, present, caring, confident. That is more than enough. That is what most women truly want. And that is what will carry you into a future of intimacy, built not on insecurity, but on truth. If this lifted a weight off your shoulders, I encourage you to share it, because there are millions of men out there carrying the same quiet fear, thinking they are alone, when in fact they are already everything they need to be. Let this be your reminder. You are normal, you are capable, and you are absolutely enough. And if you found value here today, I'd love for you to join me again. Subscribe, share this message with someone who needs it, and keep walking this path with me. Because knowledge is power, and when you know the truth, you stop living in comparison and start living in confidence. I'm Dr. Maya Kapoor, and I want you to hear this clearly. Your worth was never about inches. It's always about presence, connection, and the way you show up. And that, my friend, is something no one can take away from you.